everybody, welcome back to another episode of Fix Your Belief Systems, Fix Your BS with me, Dr. Greg Pursley, also known as Dr. G, where we discuss 5 major pillars of life and we discuss how you can be the best possible version of yourself in each one of those in things like business, finances, health, beliefs, and relationships. We try to bring you guests that are playing at a high level in all of those and give you real life guidance in each one of those areas. And I don't know if you've ever met somebody that you immediately had a connection with and you're like, man, this is going to be a buddy of mine for a long time. Recently, I met this guy and we literally hit it off just like that. It was like, we're going to be buddies for a long time. His name's Ryan Sandstrom. He is a business and insurance attorney who also helps lawyers build and market their firms to $1 billion in revenue, just as he did and continues to do at his firm. He is a wealth of knowledge, and I hope that you guys will take notes and pay attention. This is our first lawyer that we've had on the Fix Your Belief Systems podcast, and I'm so excited to have you be the number one. You're number one, Ryan. Nice to have you.
Thanks, man. What a great introduction. I worry that will never be able to live up to that nice introduction. So I'm blessed to be here. Like you said, it's amazing. We met 3-4 weeks ago now, and I feel like we've known each other for a long, long time. One of those instant relationships. I mean, that speaks volumes to you. You just clicks, man. So thanks for having me on.
It's one of those things. I talk a lot about vibration and alignment, and you just know when you align with somebody when you're kind of at the same level of affluence or level of success, if you will, where you're about to hit that next rung. And we're kind of like right there at that same level of like, man, we're exploding, we're blowing up as far as our social side as well as our businesses. And I just loved what you were doing. So one of the things I really love to ask is about success. A lot of people have their own definitions. And I know I surprised you with this, but I wanted to know, what is success to you? Like how would you define success?
It's a great question. That's a hard question too. You set me up for that one.
All right.
I would say success happens when you're firing on all cylinders in all aspects of your life. So I know you have your pillars. The way I define it is the 4 F's, right? It's faith, family, finance, and fitness. If any one of those feels off, you're going to feel like you're not complete. So you could be making a ton of money and your relationship at home is not great with your wife or kids. You're going to feel off. So I think true success is not just a financial number. It's not a number in your bank account. And it's also not just, being really ripped and being strong. It's having fulfillment in every aspect of those important pillars of your life. And I think when you have those, you truly, genuinely will feel successful. And big caveat, you don't have to be perfect with those things, right? You don't have to say, now I've finally made it. I think that's unattainable. I think you have the ability to be progressing in each one, and that progress in each area is what makes you feel fulfilled. Successful.
Man, that's really, really great answer. And what's interesting is there's a lot of, from week to week when we do our podcast, we release them, there's a lot of similarities in answers. They're all from really successful people. So people that are listening should really pay attention to that and go, oh, I see there's some similarities from week to week, and that's something maybe I should start moving towards and working towards. So, one of the things we talk obviously a lot about is beliefs and how those beliefs have to do with, growing and becoming better and becoming more successful. What as a 7-figure earner, there's majority of the population will never be a 7-figure per year earner. So what mindset shifts do you have to make when you look at trying to become a 7-figure earner to actually get there?
Well, you hit the nail on the head by your question. I've had to, basically everybody asks, what do you have to do to get there? What does it cost? And my response is everything, right? One of the phrases I often say is, you don't make $1 million, you become a millionaire. And I think that is so important to understand, that you don't just make $1 million, you become the type of person that would attract $1 million, and over and over and over again. And that's not to say that's prideful. That's to say that you have to completely shift the way you think about yourself, your surroundings, and others. The world is not as it is, but as you are, right? When you start believing that your worth is there and the value that you offer as a professional, as a husband, as a father, as a Christian, whatever you are, once you believe that and truly know that in your heart, it's then a disservice to the world not to give that to them. And so what they often say, your self-worth is your net worth, right? So when you doubt yourself and you have those limiting beliefs, you got to work through that stuff, man, because the only thing on the other side of that is everything. Like, you have the potential to become everything that you want and earn everything you want, have the family that you want. And it seems like I'm talking from, years of experience. I'm not. Like, let's be very clear. This is all really new stuff to me. I was not in a position where I understand this even, say, 2 years ago. I mean, honestly, this is a very recent development for me. And amazingly, as I've worked on myself a lot in the last 2 years, I've watched all the other aspects of my life just skyrocket. I mean, I went from making good money as a W-2 employee at a big firm to making that much money every 3 weeks. And again, I attribute that entirely not based on the fact that I work any harder or that I'm any smarter, but that I've changed and I've shifted the way that I focus in life so intentionally that it's absolutely going to go this way, and it's going to keep going that way, because mindset is everything. Again, I'm sure we'll get into it, but in order to get to that mindset, it costs a lot. I mean, it's been a hard journey, but I'm so grateful to be here.
Wow, man. That's so true too. There's a process that goes on to it. There's a really great story that I share with people when you're talking about becoming a millionaire or chasing money. And there's there's a common phrase now. People say, I got to grind. You got to get into the grind. And, there's a really good segue over to building a butterfly garden. So you chase a butterfly. If you go chase a butterfly and you try to catch it, it flies away and it's hard to catch, and you chase after this butterfly. But if you build a butterfly garden and have the butterflies come to you, you're more likely to be able to catch it. You're more calm, you're more relaxed, they're coming to you, it's attracting to you because you become someone that has built this garden that butterflies come to. And it's the same way with money. Chasing money and fighting for it. Yeah, you want to be someone that is taking action toward earning more money and generating more revenue and developing more skills. But you don't want to be the person that's constantly chasing after it because it will elude you. You want to be the person that says, how can I become better today to be worthy of that money, of the amount of money that I want, that I desire, that I expect? And that's what you're trying to do, is become better every day. So, man, you hit the nail on the head with that. That was perfect.
I'll tell you that the analogy, I love that one, the butterfly in the garden. The one that I've often used is I use the lighthouse analogy. So a lot of people they're on a boat with the flashlight, right? They're trying to find dollars all over the place. They're looking, hey, where do I find it? I say, hey, become a lighthouse, man. Become the pillar of who you are as a person and shine as bright as you possibly can so that other people can see your goodness and want to become more like you. And I don't say that again to be prideful. Robert Cialdini, who is an amazing author, he wrote the book Influence. He says true influence is not how you make somebody think about themselves, but it's true influence is not what somebody thinks about you, but it's how you make them think about themselves. And so the idea is you're becoming you're a good person. You're trying to develop and grow. And then you shed that light to everybody around you. They're going to see it. And when they see it, they go, what's that person doing? How do I get more of that in my life? And then you don't have to sell anything. I mean, you don't literally have to push anything. They're going to flock to you. Everybody sees the lighthouse. Everybody goes towards the lighthouse. And so what's amazing is as I've done that, it's been easier to sell. It's been easier to grow financially because people are seeing the goodness that's emanating. And it's entirely because I went through the struggle. I had to learn that struggle and learn how to become the lighthouse. And that's hard. But yeah, we're creating something that people would naturally be attracted to and be the type of person that makes 7 figures repeatedly.
Wow. Yeah. And that's another thing too. You said repeatedly. So a lot of people can make a lot of money at one time, but then they either lose it or they can't replicate it. And that's because they didn't become the person they need to become in order to replicate that amount of revenue. It's funny. One of the biggest mistakes that I made in my business career, and I constantly fight against this, is being in a hurry to get things done, being in a hurry, fighting with the natural laws of how things should work, setting things up properly and actually getting the job done right, and then watching watching myself reap the rewards of what I've actually sowed. But that's something that I've constantly battled with. What kind of things, have you battled with in the entrepreneurial journey, the business growth, the, 7-figure earner? What things have you dealt with that you're like, okay, I gotta, I gotta work on myself in this area?
Yeah. So I have a few really big pillars that had to absolutely shift in my life in order for me to get to this point. So as an attorney, we are taught and trained to analyze risk and basically what might go wrong, right? You think about asking any lawyer a question, we analyze and overanalyze every situation to understand the worst case scenario, and then we advise you against it. So in our nature, we think about the worst case scenario and certainly apply that to ourselves. So lawyers beat ourselves up like crazy. Like we look at ourselves and goes, I'm not this, I'm not that. And not only that, but I can't take a risk now in my own life because it's going to go wrong for these 700 reasons, right? We are really good at talking ourselves out of the potential or anything. And we do that to clients. So for a lot of years in my life, I did the very traditional path where I went linear, went small firm to in-house, then to a big firm. And then I worked my way up as a junior associate to a senior associate to a partner at a big firm in Phoenix. So I did the linear path the entire way. I didn't take any risk at all. And as a matter of fact, I didn't invest in myself along that process. I just worked, right? And so I realized, and this is the analogy that I love to ask this question is, why do you value anything in your life? So for example, why do you value, I've been married 16 years. I have 4 beautiful kids. And I love my wife. It's phenomenal, wonderful marriage at this point, but that hasn't always been the case, right? We've had our trials and challenges too. But why do I value my marriage? It's because it survived the risk of divorce, right? Why do I value my home? Because it survived the risk of foreclosure. Why do I value my health? Because it survived the risk of not being there, right? So all of a sudden you realize that the only reason I value anything is because risk exists and it survived. So risk is actually the catalyst to value. So one of my mottos in life is, if it's worth doing, it's worth overdoing, right? So you have to take those risks at some point in your life and decide that this is important enough that I'm willing to take the risk. And I know this is a long-winded answer. Those Newton's cradles, those pendulums where you lift one ball on one side and goes the other way. I have one of those on my desk at all times because I say, most people push hard on success. They say, I'm going to go this way, this way, this way. But then they're not willing to allow the risk on the other side. Like, how would you ever have physical law, potential kinetic energy to go the other direction if you don't even allow the other direction to exist? If you're doing everything traditional, if you're going along the standardized perfectionism path, you are never providing the potential kinetic energy for it to swing. So in order to have success, value, fulfillment, all the feelings that everybody's chasing, but yet they're feeling stuck, they need to focus less on getting to those feelings and more on what the risks they can take that would allow those feelings to even be possible. So risk, in my opinion, the hardest thing for lawyers is to understand that risk is actually the catalyst to value. For example, if you're buying a business, that's scary. If you're litigating in a business, that's scary. But you know what? You have to take risks in those positions to put yourself in a position where it can actually then become successful. So I think we all acknowledge that. Like, why don't you care about your 5th or 6th grade girlfriend or boyfriend? Because there's no risk to that relationship. It doesn't matter if it falls apart, right? But if it matters a lot, it's important to you, and there's a ton of risk, then you have to allow that to swing the other way. And I mean, I'm living proof of that. I mean, I left a $400,000 a year job as a partner at a big firm with 0 clients and a mortgage and 4 kids and a wife. I mean, if that's not risky, I don't know what is. And that potential kinetic energy was all the way over here for about 9 months. It was scary. I was nervous. It was risky. People called me crazy. Everybody I talked to said, "What are you doing?" And I said, I know that this is allowing me to get to the growth where I want to get on the other side. And now they're all hiring me now to consult with them because I make my annual salary every 3 weeks now. So again, the only reason that exists is because I took the risk. Take the time, do it right. But if it's worth doing, it's worth overdoing.
Yeah, and you know what? I don't think that's just a lawyer thing. I think that's the average individual. Yeah, lawyers are trained to really analyze a risk and advise their clients against that risk. But I think that's the average individual. Most people are risk adverse because of fear of failure, fear of what people will think, fear of what others will do, what happens if it doesn't work, and they build themselves up this wall brick by brick of this reasons why I can't or shouldn't or won't, or things might go wrong or whatever. And, I always love Jim Rohn, how he talks about that. He goes, you think making risky decisions or risk is bad. What about the bill for regret? What about when you get that bill for regret? And in my book, I talk about, I wrote a book, Fix Your BS, right? But in that book, I talk about I think I learned it from Tony Robbins actually, but he talks about the rocking chair test. He talks about the rocking chair test. When you're 85, 90 years old and you look back at your life and you have a rocking chair, you're in your rocking chair and you think to yourself, man, I wish I would have blank. I wish I should have, or I should have done this, or whatever it is. And you fill that out. That's what you should take action on right now. And you talked about, that swing, but that's the polarity of life, man. You wouldn't enjoy the day if you didn't have the night.
100%.
Right. You don't enjoy the win if it wasn't hard and there wasn't struggle involved in it. I mean, I know I've had sleepless nights where I broke out in cold sweats. I'm sure you've been there. I know most entrepreneurs have.
I still do. I still do. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. It's so funny to me because this happened not too long ago. I was terrified. I was literally like, I don't know what to do next. And I called I called you, I called other people. I was like, man, I'm really having this struggle. And a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners are who I contacted that were doing very, very well. And the response that I got was basically, well, welcome to entrepreneurship, welcome to business. This is what it is. It happens. Here's my advice. Here's what I would do. And it was so funny because there was very little emotional, oh my gosh, what? It was like, yeah, okay. So, here's what to do next.
You're going through it. Yeah, just like we all do. Yeah.
Yeah, and I love that. And that's why it's so hard, I think, for me and for people like us, that 1%, that people that are pushing the world, that are trying to do something that majority of people would not do out of fear or risk. I think that's why it's so hard for us to find other individuals that are on that wavelength. Because, if I tell my dreams and goals to the average individual, they're like, that's freaking crazy. You can't do that. That doesn't work.
Yeah.
What if, but I tell them to you, or I tell them my entrepreneur friends, and they're like, dude, that's awesome. Who can I help? How can I help you?
Yeah, I actually get to it. Some of my mentors, when I tell them my goals, they go, you're not thinking big enough. Like I have a couple personal mentors, Keaton Hoskins, Eric Spofford, Dick Santonastasso, some of these really, guys that have done it 4 or 5 times. I told them my goal. So I'll be very blunt. My goal is to do 50 million a year in revenue. And we have a long ways to go to get there. And I told a couple of these guys that, and they said, why not 100?
If that was like, why not?
Touche. I mean, why not?
Get to 50, why not 100? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny how right. It's funny how we set these limitations in our mind, but yeah, why not 100? It's so funny. And I had a guy not too long ago, he was signing up to be a coach, or he wanted me to coach him in business and in life. And I said, okay, well, where are you at? What do you want to do? And he's like, oh, well, I'm at 600K. I'm trying to get to 1.3 million. And I said, per month? And he goes, I wish. He's like, I wish. And I was like, oh, okay. So, what do you mean? Like per year, or what, what do you like? But in his mind, he just believed, because he didn't qualify it with per month or per year, because in his mind, that was the limit. Like, I'm trying to get to 1 million, 1.3 million per year. But when I responded with per month, or like, what, he was like, that's an option? Like,
blew his mind. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, what do you mean? And I'm like, dude, you can get there. I mean, I was trying to get there at one point, and now I'm there and I'm trying to get to the next level. Like, how can I exit out of a business for $100 million? What will that feel like? I had a dinner with a guy that exited out of his business for $130 million. I was like, dude, you got to tell me this. He's like, what? I was like, how do you feel the day after when you wake up and it's all been completed? Like, how do you feel? He goes, well, honestly, the first thing I had to come to grips with was the amount of money I was going to owe the IRS.
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah.
Get a good tax. Get a good CPA.
And I was like, oh, and then what? And he goes, and then it was like 2 weeks of going and doing whatever I wanted. And then he's like, now what? Now what do I do? Where do I reinvest this capital? What do I do with the next steps? Like that's what his mindset was like. What's next? So let's say you woke up and you sold your company for $100 million. What does the Ryan Sandstrom do when he wakes up and he's like, all right, well, I got $100 million in the bank. Now what?
I'd probably go spend a little bit of time with my wife and kids first and foremost, family first. I think the worst I heard this quote, I'm going to butcher it. I don't remember it exactly perfectly, but somebody that gets to the top of Everest, they don't just jump off. You know what I mean? They don't just all of a sudden, jump all the way down the mountain. They're going to try to stay on top of Everest. And it's not, how do I say this so clearly? Success is not financial. It is fulfillment, right? So if you are seeking the payout at the end of the day, it's going to be so disappointing when you get that payout because you haven't had the experience of becoming the type of person that would enjoy that payout, that would enjoy the process. And I know that's so cliche to say. Can I give you an example that happened to me personally?
Absolutely, man.
2019, I was a partner at a big firm in Phoenix. I had become a partner in the shortest amount of time that firm had ever seen, 5 years. Very quick for a big Phoenix firm. And that year, I worked my butt off. I mean, I worked so many hours. I tried cases. I lived in hotels 90 days that year. So for any lawyers watching, I billed 2,600 hours that year. That's billed hours. And those are legitimately billed hours. So that doesn't include all the administrative things, travel, all those other 2,600 hours. Most big firms on the East Coast and LA and all that maybe require 2,200, 2,300. 2,500 is like you're working 12 to 13 hours a day. 2,600 is 14 to 15 hours a day, 6, sometimes 7 days a week. It was brutal. I generated a lot of money for the firm that year. At the very end of the year, I got a very handsome bonus. It was the most amount of money I'd ever seen in a physical check. And my managing partner handed it to me. And I had this surreal moment where I looked at the check and you would think, wow, that's a ton of money. It was a high 6-figure check. And I looked at it and my response was not, wow, I'm so happy. I'm so proud of myself. My response was, that is how much my happiness costs.
Mm-hmm.
So I had given everything. My health was not in a good place. My relationship with God was not in a good place. My relationship with my wife and kids wasn't in a good place. But yeah, I had a lot of money. So could I buy a new car and a new watch? Sure. But I was not fulfilled by receiving the money. And that's what began the process for me to reflect on, I think I'm doing something wrong. I think everybody has to have that existential moment where you say, everything I thought I knew about climbing the corporate ladder and getting to the top, all of a sudden just crumbled. I made $400,000 as a pretty young guy, like again, working my way up. And I looked at it and I was like, nope, didn't do it for me. I didn't enjoy the process. I didn't enjoy the person I had become. So to anybody, if I get to that top of that mountain, if I'm there, I'm going to go keep climbing and find the next mountain. I will always be that person.
Well, see, that's the thing though. Like when people say money can't buy you happiness, that's what they're talking about. Like the reason why that's a statement is because of the amount of people that made a ton of money. You get a check and it's a couple $100,000, $400,000, you get $1 million check. And you would expect, for whatever reason, there's this belief that you would expect that you're like, dude, everything's solved. It's all fantastic. And I'm the happiest person in the world. But happiness is a habit that you develop. It's a choice that you go into on a regular basis in order to be fulfilled and create that fulfillment around you. It's something you can have right now. It doesn't matter how much money you have. And here's the funny thing. When you do cultivate that and you do have that inside of you, money is easier to attract to you because you end up with more opportunities. You end up with more relationships. You end up meeting people that you never would have met if you had a Debbie Downer attitude. Well, I'll be happy when I have X amount of dollars. No, you won't, because you're not happy now.
100%. Happiness is a choice, right? It is not a destination. You don't, and I actually think this is true. I'm a very Christian person. I think like literally we basically look at ourselves and we know whether we're good or not, right? The whole process, we understand ourselves so intimately. So it's not somebody else telling us, hey, you've made it, right? You're good enough now. or some title or some partner or some anybody externally saying, now you're good. You know when you've arrived. And to be honest, I don't think any of us ever quite arrive. I think that's always what one of the beautiful blessing this life is we're always striving, we're always growing, I believe that fundamentally at my core, that my purpose in life is to develop and grow into the best version of myself and then give it away. So like that, fundamentally, my job is to continue. My job is not to arrive, it's to continue.
Yeah, dude, that is awesome. And that's a great way to put it, because so many people put their happiness into the future. When I get that car, when I get that house, when I get that relationship, when I make that much money, I'll be happy. And that's not the case. You should be happy and content with where you are. Therefore, every step of the way, you're like, dude, I'm getting a little bit better. I'm moving forward a little bit. I'm happy. I'm content a little bit more each day, which is something we should all allow ourselves to have, is happiness and contentment, because we're all worthy of it. You know, I've talked to so many people and coached so many people over the years and I was so guilty of this as well. I didn't believe I was worthy of happiness and contentment and fulfillment, because I didn't believe it was right for me, or that I was worthy of it. And so I would be very down on myself and very hard on myself. It's still something it creeps back up, but at least I'm aware of it. And so anybody that's watching this, first and foremost, look yourself in the mirror and just look at yourself and say, man, you know, you might have been through some stuff, but you're still here. You're still here. You're worthy of success. You're worthy of anything you want in this life. I mean, you wouldn't be here if you weren't worthy of it. And I believe in God, and I believe in abundance, and I believe that if God is abundant and you are made in God's likeness, then you're abundant. So why not accept the abundance that's around you of happiness and joy and fulfillment and love and money and everything?
So I had another sweet experience in my life that I look back and I'm so grateful for, that was really hard for me. So I'm a very Christian person. I read the Bible a lot. I just put a video out on this the other day and it resonated with a lot of people. So you said you wrote a book. I'm working on a book myself. It's actually a Christian-centered book. You know, the Lord's two greatest commandments in Matthew, right? Love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, might, mind, and strength. And the second is like unto it, love thy neighbor as thyself. We minimize those to love God, keep the commandments, and love your neighbor, serve others. So keep the commandments, serve others. I was sitting in church maybe a year and a half, almost 2 years ago now, and I was reading those verses, and over and over and over again, I read the last part of the second verse, as thyself, as thyself, as thyself. And I had this breakdown moment where I literally asked myself, do I love myself? And the answer was no. And then I realized that a precondition to serving others, the enabling ability to serve other people, love thy neighbor as thyself. It's a precondition. It's the enabling, right? The only way I can truly love others and serve others is if I love myself. And then the first commandment is like unto it. If you love yourself, God made you in his image. You are going to try to become the best version of yourself. Just like you love your kids, you love your wife, you want the absolute best for them. Now I love myself and I want the absolute best for me. And that understanding that you love yourself, and here's a really important thing to understand. You do not have to be perfect to love yourself. And I'm very, very clear about that, because God didn't make us, the purpose of life. I say this all the time. I get excited about it because this is really important to me. The purpose of life is not to be perfect. It is to overcome imperfection. Our job is to develop and grow into the type of person that God has envisioned us to become. And we do that first by loving ourselves. And then once we love ourselves, we can give that to others. And then once we give that to others, we're going to want it the best for ourselves, which is keeping the commandments and being a good person. So here's the way I apply it. Why do you judge other people? It's because you need to elevate yourself and you don't feel very good about yourself internally, so you don't love yourself enough. Why are you jealous of somebody else? It's because you're looking down on yourself and somebody else is above where you think you should be, right? Why are you messing up all the time? Why are your goals not achieving? It's because you don't think you're worthy. I mean, deep down, subconsciously, you probably don't think that you're worthy of having the result of feeling that full, complete emotion in yourself. It's taken every bit of my being for the last 2 years to look inside myself and to learn to love myself, imperfections and all. I'm a weird dude. I have my own challenges and my own issues. Ask my wife, ask my kids, ask my friends. I'm not perfect by any stretch. But I've had to learn to appreciate those aspects about myself. and to learn to appreciate that as I develop, I'm so grateful that I have those imperfections. I would not have the fulfillment in my life if I didn't have the challenge in my life. So all of a sudden now I'm grateful for me. I know that sounds cliche and it sounds silly, but it's a true deep-seated belief that wasn't there for most of my life. Most of my life, I lived by a precept that I call the perception of perfection. We pretend to the world that we're perfect. And the harder we pretend, the more we know we're lying to ourselves, and the more that we know that we're actually we're not perfect. So the harder you try, the worse you feel, right? So I choose empathy, I choose vulnerability, I choose honesty, and I choose becoming the best version of myself, which means overcoming my challenges. And then the last thing I'll say is this. Before Christ started his real ministry in the Bible, he spent 40 days alone in the wilderness, right? We would never criticize Christ for working on himself before he came to other people. And then you ask yourself, when Christ started giving himself away to others, do you think he loved himself? Well, it's a no-brainer. Obviously he did. He loved himself so much that he was willing to give himself away to other people. He loved himself. He loved his understanding of what his role and responsibility was, that he knew that he had to give it away. So to people listening out there, I hope that one of the deepest rooted beliefs that if you don't have right now that you develop is a deep, sacred love of yourself and a gratitude to God for your imperfections, because that will allow you to become the best version of yourself. And the only reason I can say these things now is because I've gone through hell to figure that out. So I genuinely hope that people appreciate their imperfections, appreciate their trials, and love themselves all along the way. You're going to feel so much more fulfilled through the journey. It actually has meaning now. It's not a destination. Now you get to become rather than just have an outcome.
Man, Ryan, that is like, I don't think, I want you to know how insightful that is. Like, there's going to be people listening to this that are 20 and 30 years old and 40 years old and even 50 and 60. But like the younger you are, 20 and 30 years old, it's really hard to contemplate and understand what that was. The phrase that at my house, above my squat rack, I have a phrase that says, know thyself. Know thyself, right above it. That's all it says, know thyself. And I'll stare at that. I wake up at 5:30, depending on the day, but I'll wake up and I'll be down there. I'll be trying to get moving, drinking some water, whatever. But if you can know who you are, if you know thyself and then have gratitude and love yourself for who you are, not because you're perfect, but because you've made the mistakes and you're still here and you're overcoming stuff and you're growing and you're fighting to be the best person you can be. But that's exactly what you're talking about. Know yourself, like know who you are, love yourself, have gratitude for the struggles that you've been through and the things that you're facing, because when you truly have gratitude and you go, this is really hard, but I'm so appreciative of this hard time because it's going to make me so much better on the back end. Right. Whatever that looks like. I can't predict it, but I know I'm going to be better. I know I'm going to be a stronger, more viable human being. Right. Then when you do have the opposite end happen of the happiness and of not happiness, but of success, of result, I should say, then you're like, dude, yeah, that was so worth it. Because I knew this was coming someday because I had faith and because I loved myself through the process. So man, that is so insightful. And I love the way you phrase it.
Well, and what's important too is I'm still on the journey. You know what I mean? I still have my doubts. I still look at myself and beat myself up. I'm still human, right? Right. We're all human, right? I mean, being human doesn't mean you're perfect. It's quite the opposite. It means you're human, right? And we're not there. We're not supposed to be there. And I think when you acknowledge that last little piece of that we're not supposed to be there yet, like we're supposed to be on the journey. And that's the name of the game, man, is understanding yourself along the way. I don't know if this is doctrinal or anything like that, but again, this is Sandstrom Doctrine 101. Don't quote me on it. But, in this life, when you make a mistake and you stand before a friend or a family member and you feel pretty guilty about it, right? I think that's how it's going to be with God, right? Mm-hmm. I think we're going to stand in front of it and have a perfect brightness, a perfect understanding of our guilt. I don't think he's going to have to judge us. He's going to go, and we're going to go, I know. And so I think at that moment, it just comes down to two things. Do you love yourself? And do you have, Christ in your life that overcomes your imperfections for you at that moment? And I think if you can answer those two things honestly, hey, look, I tried my best. I'm not perfect, but I tried to overcome my imperfections, and the gap is made up for by the grace of Christ, then you're good. I mean, honestly, that's true. That's true. There's no regret, right? There's just that's true happiness. That's true success. That's true value.
Yeah, man. What a very impactful 30 minutes of a conversation. I mean, there's so many great, insightful things. But what's interesting to me is when you talk about becoming the person you have to become in order to have the things you want to have, that's an ongoing, constant growth struggle. And growth is struggle. People want the easy road, or they want the lack of struggle. But lack of struggle is death. That's when you don't have any struggle anymore, is when you're dead. I think the biggest travesty that people in our lifetime, for people, I should say, is when they settle, when they give up. They have all these dreams and goals and things that they want to accomplish, but they settle and just say, well, it wasn't meant for me, or it wasn't something that I was going to be able to do, so I didn't pursue it. I mean, I guess, have you ever been in that position? And you may have already answered that with when you talk about leaving the firm and going out on your own, but did you get to that point where you're like, you know what, no more settling, screw that? Was there a moment that you remember that?
Yeah, and I hope no one has to go through the moment that I went through. I mean, the smartest people in the world are those who learn from other people's mistakes, not their own. Right? That's why we read books. That's why we read scriptures. That's why we listen to podcasts, is because our goal is to learn from others and then apply that into our own life. If I had learned this principle from somebody else, I would have avoided a lot of hardship in my life. So you and I talked about it a little bit. When I was 36, I was married with 4 kids. I was a pastor at the time, but I was doing everything for the wrong reasons, right? I wanted the title. I wanted the money. I wanted to be seen as a successful lawyer. And then I thought I was going to feel fulfilled. I had my own vices, my own challenges, my own difficulties. I wasn't talking to anybody. I was pretending to the world like I was perfect, and I felt empty inside, to the point where I questioned whether or not I wanted to be here anymore. And I think everybody goes through that. And here I felt so selfish. I felt so selfish because here I am with a wife and kids, with everything, outwardly that the world says you want. I'll call it first world problems, but I felt empty. COVID came around in 2020, and not a political issue for me. It was a life or death issue for me. So I got sick with COVID in June of 2020, and ended up in total isolation and in the hospital for 17 days. So I was not able to be by my wife or by my family at all for almost 3 weeks, while I had 105-degree temperature. I had pleurisy of the lungs, which is the lining around your lungs is inflamed. Feels like you're getting stabbed when you breathe. I had pericarditis around my heart, which is the lining around your heart, makes it feel like you're having a heart attack for 10 days straight. I had, like pain down my arm and racing heart rate just lying in bed, and it would drop to 30 beats per minute and up to 160. It was awful. July 3rd, 2020, 2:00 in the morning, I texted my wife and I said, I don't want to go to sleep because I don't know if I'm going to wake up tomorrow. And I texted her our life insurance information, our bank account passwords, and made sure she had everything. I wrote a letter to her and to my kids where I said goodbye, and I get emotional still talking about it. It was 3 years ago. In that moment, I paused my life and I prayed and I said, if I wake up tomorrow, I'm going to do everything I possibly can to fix me. I was broken. And grace of God, I woke up. I mean, clearly, I woke up and I didn't solve it immediately. And it took me about 5 months. And what happened is I woke up and I said, I know I need something different, but I didn't know what that looked like, right? I didn't all of a sudden have this clear vision of exactly how to get to the next spot, or how to develop, how to grow. My body was still messed up for a long time. It took me 5 months to fully heal. My mind, the brain fog, that was very much a real thing for me. I struggled emotionally. I was on a lot of antibiotics, a lot of steroids, in and out of the hospital still with heart issues and stuff like that. And I was a healthy guy before, by the way. I was overweight and stressed a little bit, but it just kicked my butt. Greg, I haven't shared this with anybody publicly, so if it's okay, I'll share something that's kind of private to me with you. In November of 2020, so this is 5 months after COVID, and I was trying to figure out what I wanted in life. I was actually almost more conflicted at that point because now I knew I wanted something else, but I didn't know what it was. And my body was still not quite there. So now I felt like I was miserable. Now I knew that where I was not where I wanted to be, and I didn't know how to get to the next spot. And I was broken. I mean, walking home from church in tears, broken. Waking up with cold sweat hands and crying myself. I'm a 37-year-old guy making a bunch of money, and here I am, like, just broken. I had a dream at November 2020 that just, broke me to the point that I knew I needed to do something. I had a dream that my 4-year-old son was mourning me. I have a vision in my mind. When he gets sad, he slumps his shoulders over and leans forward. And I have a vision of him in that position mourning me. And I realize I'm being selfish. I am worrying so much about me. I'm doing everything in my own mind. This is all about my fulfillment. And I paused and I said, what am I doing? My purpose here is I need to provide every opportunity for my children, for my family, for my friends to succeed and to feel value in their life. How can I do that? And God told me it's by becoming the best Christian you can. Christ is literally perfect. So become the best version of you and then give yourself away. And so I started on this journey. I'm down 60 pounds. I left my job. We moved. I went to counseling. My wife and I went to counseling. I had really hard conversations with family members, with friends. I stepped into a really difficult place that I knew I absolutely had to. Otherwise, I was going to let down God, myself, my family, my children, everything. And I am so grateful now in retrospect that I had that wake up moment to realize, get my stuff together because life can be amazing. Forget what other people say. Yeah, you can do it.
I love
it. You can get,
dude. I love what you're talking about because this is something I talk a lot about with people, and I'm still going through it as well. But because you never really overcome everything. I mean, you're constantly working towards, and you run into a new you, and then that new you has different things, and you run into a new you. And I think people think that, I'm going to get through this and everything will be great. No, there's always something else that you're going to be running into. But really, I talked about no one's coming to save you. And for the longest time, I had this idea that someone was coming to save me. Someone was going to take me out of my pain, my misery, my frustration, my depressions, my anger, my whatever. And that's where the know thyself comes from. That's where that comes from. Because if you know yourself, then the feeling like someone needs to come save you doesn't need to happen anymore. And when you're really searching for God, God is in here. That's why knowing yourself is so important. In here. It's not external. And that's why people buy things trying to fill the void of insecurities. They try to fill this imaginary hole, but it's because they're avoiding themselves in here and knowing yourself. And
I love that.
We all go through, or we should all go through that process of looking internally and going, who am I? What is my purpose? And how can I serve others through that purpose? But that only comes from silence and solitude and looking internally and going, man, I need to figure me out, because people will help you. They'll be there to support you. They'll be there as friends, as colleagues, as people that are guiding you, mentors, but they're not going to come save you. The only person that's going to come save you is you. And when you do that, that's when you can say, well, I was saved by God, or I was saved by Jesus, because that's in here. That's in here.
I love that.
And that's what so many people avoid that. And I did it for the longest time.
One way I explain that, as I said, look, God's already made us. Jesus already did what he did. The only difference between somebody who feels those emotions internally and not is their application of that to them. Like nothing that they do is going to change. It's all about my acceptance of what they've done for me. It's like you said, it's all in here. The world is not as it is, but as you are. I mean, if people realize that when you change, your surroundings change. When your perception change, your outcomes change. Like you become the best version of you, and all of a sudden, literally everything around you is an opportunity. There's challenges and trials and all that, but my goodness, as soon as you start doing that inner development work, the world opens up to you in a way that you literally had no idea was even possible. I am still amazed to this. I'm in rooms that I never thought I would be in. I mean, I'm making money that I never thought I would make. My relationship with my wife is better than it's ever been. And I know there's still growth to be had. So I'm like, holy cow, if I figured this out in 2 years, what does 30 years from now look like? I am so excited now. Life doesn't scare me anymore. It excites me. It makes me excited to wake up in the morning to say, let's see what happens next, God. Like what a beautiful thing this is.
Yeah. That's so cool, man. You know, the hard part about that is like you figured it out in 2 years, but the hard part is getting to the point where you realize you need to figure it out. It's the awareness.
Yeah.
It's and most people reach that rock bottom before they become aware that maybe something is not working and I should change. And so many mentors that I have talk about, well, why wait to reach rock bottom? Why not just put yourself there now and go, this is the day right now that I'm not going to go in this direction anymore because I don't like where it's headed. Instead of letting it go until all of a sudden, boom, something explodes and you're like, now I have to change. You know, you don't have to start from the bottom. You can start from right where you are. And if you're going down toward the bottom, change and go back up. And you know, I give advice based on what I know, and you give advice based on what you know. And I just love this is my longest podcast ever, by the way, because
awesome.
I just think what you're saying is so true and impactful for other people to hear. But you know, you don't have to wait till you're rock bottom. And I've gone down rock bottom a couple of times. I say the first mistake I made in business, the biggest mistake probably was I was in a hurry. I was in a hurry to make money now. I was in a hurry to get to the next level. I was in a hurry to read this book, hurry to implement it, hurry. And that doesn't work well when you come to the natural laws of the universe. You plant a seed, you till it, you water it, you whatever, you pay attention to it, and then it turns into the plant over time. Well, it's the same thing with you. You put this stuff out there and you pay attention and you work it and you keep the weeds away, and then it turns into something that grows. So that was my first mistake in business. And the second mistake was my ego. I thought I couldn't fail. I believe in myself so much that I thought it was not possible to fail. So therefore I didn't pay attention to the things that people told me to pay attention to. And it put me in a bad spot, mentally, emotionally, physically, financially, all of those things. So at one point I had massive issues with relationship with my wife and relationship or with business and my own self-worth. And on the other side, I have great relationship with my wife and my self-worth has changed, but because my ego was in the way, I didn't pay attention to the things I needed to. So it created a financial stress. So, you know, there's different stages within your life where you'll have different stressors and you have to go, okay, I get it. That was something that was, now I need to change my perspective and become the next level of myself to pay attention to those things, even if I didn't think I had to before.
100%. And that's why people listen to podcasts, right? Is so they don't have to go through that crazy, awful journey. And I think we said it before, like if somebody could learn to apply these principles now and avoid a lot of that hardship, I mean, you can still have the outcome. You can still have the growth that you're looking for. You can feel that negative pressure going that way and then course correct. You don't have to be on your deathbed, quite literally, to figure this out. Like you can be as fulfilled and you know, pain is a really good motivator. It really is. You know, oftentimes we procrastinate because we don't feel enough pain, right? So, I mean, if you're waiting to hit rock bottom, I mean, I guess you're going to get there and it's going to hurt way more than it needs to. So yeah, I mean, take the lessons that you learn from these podcasts and from videos and I've read a lot of books over the years, the last 2 years particularly, and allow that to change you. Allow that to, accelerate your timeline, right? I mean, if you don't, you can go through what I call dumb tax, right? You've heard that phrase before. Like, you can learn it all yourself, and it's going to take a really long time. I was 38 years old before I ever made $1 million. I wish I had learned this stuff in my 20s. I probably would have gotten there a lot quicker. But I was 38. Call me a late bloomer, call me whatever it is. The reality is I was prideful and I didn't want to listen to anybody else because I figured I knew it all myself. And once I realized that I probably should have been listening and should have been learning and implementing what other people had taught, I realized that I had done myself a disservice because I slowed myself down by years. And I'm grateful that I figured it out. And again, God kicked me in the butt and he said, hey, figure this out. And he gave me that opportunity. Now I get to share with other people. So don't wait. Don't wait to implement this stuff. Don't wait till the pain is, forces you to do it.
I think so. In the book Outwitting the Devil, Sharon Lechter released that book. It was by Napoleon Hill. I think it was written in like 1937, but he didn't release it out of fear of the backlash. And then his wife didn't want to release it. And then the Napoleon Hill Foundation finally released it in 2011 with the help of Sharon Lechter. But in Outwitting the Devil, one of my favorite books, he talks about that most people really don't come to understand these principles that we're talking about until they're 40. It actually says it in the book, when they're asking the devil questions, and the devil says most people don't come to understand these things until they're in their 40s. And it literally clicked in my mind because I was like, yeah, that's so true, because I don't have the life experience to really understand it. So whoever's listening to this, take a moment, think about the things. I hope you're taking notes, because there were some really major life lessons that were taught in this podcast. But if you're not taking notes, go back, listen to it again, take notes, and then review those notes and take a moment and take an audit of yourself. I think I'm going to redo this, and tonight I'm going to redo an audit of myself. What needs to be worked on? What needs to be improved? What things, thought processes, mindsets, beliefs, actions, habits, what things need to be better, and how can you be better? Not that it's bad who you are or who you were, but we can always be better. So, Ryan, man, thanks for being on this podcast. This is like amazing, some of the information you've given and some of the insight. And there's so many people that this is going to help. So I appreciate you doing that.
Likewise, what a blessing it is to know you, my friend. Honestly, I feel blessed that we got to connect, and we'll stay connected for a long time. Listeners, listen to this guy. He knows what he's talking about.
Well, same thing with you. And I know you have a PDF called Legal Blind Spots that you give away to people to identify their legal issues. If anybody wants that, we'll have a link below. They can click on that. Is there anywhere else they can find that, Ryan?
Yeah, so just go to my Instagram. It's just Ryan P. Sandstrom. Shoot me a DM. You can go to questaelaw.com. That's QUESTAE law.com. Questae is my company where we teach and educate other lawyers how to build and scale and live fulfilling lives. It means mindset in Latin. Lawyers love Latin. So we teach people, again, on the business side, we teach entrepreneurs how to avoid the blind spots that they don't even know. A lot of what we talked about today is things you don't know that you should probably be thinking about. My job is to help you identify those in life and in business. And then we actually have strategies that we do. All of our business clients, we do flat fees. So I've made that very clear. I don't want to be too salesy on this. But we really make it an easy process for people to identify and solve the blind spots in life.
That's awesome, man. Well, I really appreciate that. I'm going to actually download that. I didn't download that yet, so I'm going to download it. And it's great to call you a mentor and a friend and a peer. Appreciate you for being here and dropping some just absolute amazing information for people. For everybody listening, make sure you click on Ryan's link below. You can see him on Instagram, but also make sure you look at that PDF called Legal Blind Spots. He's going to have a book coming out too. We'll share that out as well on all of our social media platforms. Thanks for being here, buddy. This has been another episode of Fix Your Belief Systems, where we talk about the 5 major pillars of life in your relationships, your business or career, your finances, your health, and your belief or faith, and how you can implement simple strategies that you can improve your life and build your life on your terms, your dream life on your terms. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. This has been another episode of Fix Your Belief Systems. See you next time.